remember me. Don't start having fun till you get to the end of the hall. Anybody want to go back there and help? No, I guess not. I posted something on Facebook earlier this week, I think, about noisy little children. Boy, I love the noise that kids make. Kind of quiet around the Bain household. All I can hear is Harry cussing at the referees for pass interference. Had several of those last night that didn't get called. Well, Brian, y'all wound up losing in overtime. Y'all need a new coach. I'm not sure that fixes everything. LSU was playing with a new coach. I'm sure he was under the gun. They didn't embarrass themselves, but it's another story. I'll talk with you today about the point. I previously talked about this, remember? If you hadn't gone to see City Slickers, the movie yet, and you're hopeless, you gotta just keep on trying. Go see City Slickers. It's a cowboy movie, me and Daddy used to call it. That's a cowboy movie. What do you watch? A Western. And Billy Crystal stars in it. But they go to a dude ranch, and they're actually driving some cattle, a whole herd. There's a plot twist there. But the old ranch hand that's kind of leading them, named Curly, he's rough as a cod. And he tells Billy, his character, everything's about this right here. And he said, you figure? He said, oh, no, one thing. And he said, and he said, well, what is the one thing? He said, that's what you've got to figure out. Because when you figure out what this is, nothing else matters. And boy, it's worth the price of admission, I think. Also, I'll share with you one of my favorite illustrations from The Chosen, where the Apostle Matthew, who was a tax collector, he's amazingly, in the first century, he's on the spectrum, which I think is perfect. And his whole head is scrambled, and he doesn't know which end is up, and he's often confused. He's very, very, very smart, very intelligent, but he is apparently, by the director's choice, autistic, and he's following Jesus. And he's telling Gaius, the Roman centurion who used to be his babysitter, Gaius was having a bad day, and he says, you know, when I wake up in the morning and things are scrambled around and I don't know what to think or what to do or where to go, he says, my teacher, Jesus, my teacher has taught me that I only have one thing to do today. Follow him. I said, well, I like that. I just like that. I keep playing it over and over again. So I want to talk with you today about this. About the point. Every year I publish a new book called The Point, like the point for 2025 or points. And they're really the points that I was trying to make or intended to make in any of my sermons or children's messages or lessons. A lot of talking, a lot of teaching, a lot of verbiage, a lot of commotion. But everything ought to have a point, maybe just one point. When I first started preaching, all my sermons were strictly outlined, And I preached with notes, and everything that I wanted to say had its own point. Point number one, point number two, and that's how my sermons moved along. It kept them from being so long, I guess, and kept me to the point. And so I get a little patient sometimes, and so sometimes I don't do this with strangers or with people with whom I'm not well acquainted with. Sometimes we'll be talking, and I'll say, get to the point. Cut to the chase. Get to the gravy. Come on, man. Tell me. Just tell me. So let's go on. This is the next one, Carter. There's Matthew. I only have one. You know, you may think I read a book years ago called The Tyranny of the Urgent. You're going to wake up every morning if you're like me and think of, oh, I got to do this and this and this and this. Probably not. You don't have to do these things. You don't even have to eat. You don't even have to drink or breathe. You don't have to live. There ought to be some things that you have to do. Well, I've just got to do this. I believe I learned this a little bit from my dad. My dad's life became very simple and uncluttered in the last years of his life. He began giving things away. Daddy, my garage is full of stuff. Don't give me no more of your stuff. When my dad passed away, we put everything that belonged to him at the time of his passing in a little bitty, what was it, 8x8 or something like 4x8? And it was kind of pitiful. Look there. Well, there's Daddy. There's all Daddy's stuff. I learned something. I'm not suggesting that you just throw people and things away pell-mell, but ask the Lord to help you simplify your life a little bit. Lord, do things have to be this? Am I doing a lot of things that I have no business doing that aren't really part of what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I just cluttered? They even have a cable TV show now called Hoarders. You go there and watch people that can't even walk through their house. They got stuff stacked up to the ceiling that they're saving for a rainy day. And it never rains. Let's look at the next slide. There's Curly. For the life I use. What's this actor's name? Where's Randy? Jack. That's Jack Palance. Jack Palance, you're right. He won an Oscar for this performance. If you remember that Oscar presentation, he came out and he was like 85 years old. Remember what he did on stage? He did a one-handed, one-armed push-up and then walked off the stage with the Oscar. Jack Palance. Played in a lot of cowboys, didn't he? He was almost always the bad guy. Makes a great bad guy. In the last years of his life, he worked on Ridley's Believe It or Not, and then his daughter picked it up and did it for years after he passed away. Jack Palance played Curly. This. So once you figure out what that is, nothing else matters. It's not exactly what he said, but when you watch the movie, you won't be shocked by his cowboy language. Let's go on, Carter. I'm going to give you something in a nutshell right here. If you don't get anything out of any sermon I've ever preached, or any sermon I might ever preach, get this right here. Romans chapter 10, verses 9 and 10. Two verses of Scripture that's the only verses of Scripture you need to tell someone how to become a Christian. It's the gospel. I've used it hundreds and hundreds of times. Later, a little bit farther down the line, though, which I'll throw this in kind of like for free. Romans 10:13 caps it off, and I'll share that with you. But you don't really even need that. All you need is this. Two verses. You memorize it. You put it on a card and carry it around with you everywhere you go. If you come up on a wreck and you come up here and someone says, someone tell me how to get to heaven, I'm dying. This right here. If you have a niece or nephew or a grandchild crawl up in your lap and say, how can I ask Jesus into my heart? You need, as a Christian, you need to have this in your holster. Romans the book of Romans, Paul's letter to the Romans, chapter 10, verses 9 and 10. This is all you need. Now, teachers and preachers and denominational people and theologians and scholars clutter all of this up. How to become a Christian. How do you give your life to Christ? How do you come into how do you respond to God's invitation to join his family? And so they put all these kind of rules and rituals, and you got to do this to be saved and do this to be saved. You'll find that sometimes people just come up like the Philippian jailer comes up to Paul and Silas. They're in jail, and they said, "Sirs, what do I have to do to be saved?" Now, if Paul didn't answer that question right then and there, then there's not a God in heaven. And what he said was, believe on the Lord Jesus Christ and you'll be saved. Now, if that's different from what our denomination teaches, then we're wrong. If there are a dozen other different religious and church things we have to do, and ceremonies we have to observe, and actions we need to take besides that, then Paul didn't tell the Philippian jailer the truth. But he did. Look right here. Paul says, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord. Addison and I were talking about demons this morning. She says she lives with a couple. We're studying from The Chosen. We're looking at Mary Magdalene. Jesus cast 7 evil spirits out of Mary Magdalene. So we talked a little bit about evil spirits. There are a lot of things that are in the Bible that are even a part of my faith that I have a real hard time grasping or believing in. And I don't know if I've ever seen an evil spirit unless I just thought somebody was just a really problematic person. They may have been demon-possessed. But I'll tell you why I'm not all that worried about that. I told Addison, now I believe this. If Jesus Christ lived inside of you, demons cannot touch you. They can't inhabit you. They can't possess you. They cannot have you. You're off limits. You don't have to say a certain prayer or cross yourself or genuflect. If Jesus is inside, I'm not just telling you that they can't get in. Friends, they don't want to get into anything where Jesus is at. Church or anything else. There are several times when Jesus showed up in the Gospels and the demons said, "Whoa! Oh, what are you doing here? Are you here to torment us before the time?" Jesus said, "Shut up! Or get over here in these pigs." That was one of the coolest things Jesus ever did, besides spitting in that blind man's eye. Suicide. That's a joke. You mean Jenny's the only one that got that? Explain that to Johnny when you get home. You study so much preparing these sermons and then. All right, so if you're ever working with someone and it's kind of borderline, you're wondering, say, hey, just for fun, we're having this awful conversation. I just like, could you do something for me? What is it? I'd just like you to say the words, Jesus is Lord. If their eyes get real big and they break out in a sweat, if they turn around and run off, you might have found somebody. They cannot say that. That's a pretty good test. Just say it. All you got to do is repeat it. Jesus is Lord. If you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord while believing in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. When? When you do that. And then he says that this is the way it is. And then he talks about this is the part that your heart did, this is the part that your mouth did. So for with the heart man believes to righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made to salvation. Now you don't even need verse 10, but it's kind of just there for extra, it's free. You confess with your mouth. You say, Jesus is Lord. while at the same time believing that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. If you have those two verses, I beg you, I implore you to learn where to find those verses, or write them on a card, or engrave them on something that you can carry with you everywhere you go, so that you don't need a preacher, you don't need a pastor, you don't need a teacher, you don't need a scholar, you don't need a Bible expert. If you have that right there, you will be saved. That's the gospel. That's the saving truth. Now let's go on. We must carefully not miss the point. If you and me, if we miss the point, the whole world will be lost. In other words, if we're thinking of something else, if we're emphasizing something else, if we're spending all of our time in something else, and we're not focusing on this, the whole world is lost. Let's go on, Carter. If anyone, anywhere dies without Christ, not one other thing that they ever did will matter at all. Not one thing. Andy, if I had your military record, I don't know if I could even live with myself. I'd probably wear my uniform everywhere I go. Can you still wear your uniform? No. I'm sorry. That's not a fair question, is it? But you still have it? Yes. Just hang it up somewhere. It might be at Mama's house. He looked pretty snappy, didn't he? Military. Man, doesn't that make you proud as a mom? Did it make you proud as a sister? Very good. Well, on Veterans Day, I'd go find me a parade. I was going to say, I would want all the appreciation I can possibly get. And it's wonderful, and we appreciate it. We are very thankful. But if that's all you ever did, and you never invited Jesus to become Lord of your life, you would go out into eternity without Christ. If anyone dies without Christ, it doesn't matter if they were the president or the governor, if they won the Oscar awards, if they built great buildings, if they had great wealth and money in the bank. If they died without Christ, nothing else matters. When you stand before God, God doesn't want to find out or hear about what you made on your report card, or that you graduated summa cum laude from some college. He doesn't care. There's only one thing that he wants to know. There's only one thing that is going to determine your eternity. Is Jesus your Lord and Savior? Let's go on. This picture was taken on Friday, September the 3rd, 1976. That's at the Flint Baptist Church, and that's when Dennis Bain and Terry Evans got married. That big person sitting to the right of me, that's my best man, that's Dan. Over here to the left-hand side, there's Robin, that's Barry's maid of honor. For my family members, Dawn is in there, and didn't know Tran. Brett and Susie are in that group. My cousin Jimmy from Lardendale, they're there. Keith Livingston, he's serving the Lord, huh? And Terry Buckley's in there, yeah, Tim, yeah. An important time in my life. Pastors that I'd served under two pastors since I became a Christian. They must have really had a deep impression on me. And not so much that I now consider myself to be their disciples, is is that Steve Tucker and John Hamilton, everything they did connected me to Jesus. It wasn't connecting me to them. I didn't become a fan or a follower of the pastor. I didn't feel like I was getting everything that I was getting it from the preacher. They were showing me how to find God. And they must have made an impression on me, because when we were planning this, we had our vows, and that is a powder blue tuxedo that I'm wearing. It's the top of the line. Just knock your eyes out. With that fluffy kind of French, it was frou-frou. It was very frou-frou. We decided all of this. And Terry and I had already discussed this, and we sat down with John Hamilton. He was going to do the ceremony. I said, Brother John, this is an important day for us. And I love Terry, and she loves me, and we're starting our ministry and our life and our family together. Here's what we'd like you to do. Now, you see, you can't really tell there, but Flint Baptist Church is packed. It's full. We had about 40, 50 teenagers in our youth group at Flint. And it had been several years since I had been a member here at the church. I left to serve on staff. But everybody we ever went to school with, and our friends, our neighbors, everybody in Flint, and our family, mostly our family, they filled that place. Every pew was full, and there were people standing out in the hall. And we said, Brother John, we believe, now we didn't know this was going to be like this, but we had sent out a lot of invitations. And we said, Brother John, this is an important day for us. And before we do anything at all, before the bride marches out, or the groom, before any of the wedding party comes out, I want you to go out there and tell everybody there the gospel. And you tell them how to be saved. If you come here to this wedding to honor this young couple, then they appreciate that. But their greatest concern, you know what they're thinking about? This young man and this young, you know what the only thing on their mind is not saying I do. It's asking you if you will. And our pastor extended an invitation. He didn't give an altar call. I have no idea if anybody got saved that day, but that was the most important thing that happened that day. I can't take any credit for it and say that makes me a super Christian. I had some wonderful pastors. And right from the very beginning, I knew what the point was. I knew what the point was. I got it. And gratefully, thankfully, Terry got it too. Let's go on. I'm going to show you something else. Jesus did all these things. Jesus came. He was real. He did all these things. Look at number one up there. Jesus fed the hungry. But that wasn't the point. That wasn't the point. Jesus didn't come here to combat world hunger or to make sure that nobody in the world was ever hungry again. Jesus did not solve the problem of world poverty or world hunger. If that's why he came, he failed miserably. Jesus fed 5,000 people. When they came back the next day, Jesus said, you didn't come because of the words that I spoke. You just came because of the bread and the fish. And he sent them away hungry. He said, you missed the point. Jesus and God, they're not all that interested in making sure that all the hungry people in the world get their bellies full. That's not his top priority. He fed the thousands so that he could then say, I am the bread of life. I heard a video this week of a man who's a billionaire. And he said he took about 5 years of his life and he spent millions and millions and millions of dollars of his money helping the poor, feeding the poor, getting the poor out of poverty. And he says, I just had to quit. He said, that's a hole that has no bottom. He said, There was a time when somebody came to anoint the feet of Jesus and Judas started saying, well, we could have sold that and given the money to the poor. Jesus said this. He said, you're always going to have poor folk. You're always going to have poor folk. It don't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how much money you give away or how much food you distribute. There's always going to be poor folk. He says that you can't fix it because it's not about poverty or hunger. Jesus asked the Samaritan woman for water. Why? Because he was thirsty? No. Don't miss the point. He said, we got to go to Samaria. And the disciples said, well, nobody has to go to Samaria. Why don't we go? We hate Samaria. Worse than we hate LSU and Tennessee. Jesus said, there's somebody I got to see over there. And he asked her for a cup of water. Was it because he wanted to drink? No. It's so that he could start a conversation and tell her that he had living water, and if she would just ask him, he would give it to her, and she would never thirst again. Jesus gave sight to the blind. Was he on a tear to rid the world of blindness? No. He healed the blind man, and then he said, I want you to know, I want everybody to know that I am the light of the world. If you don't get that, because of that, you missed the point. He restored hearing to the deaf so that they could hear what the point was. He gave speech to the mute so they could confess him as Lord, not just so that they could talk. Jesus made the lame to walk so that they could follow him, and Jesus raised the dead because he was just showing off. He said, I'm the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he die, yet shall he live again. If Jesus came to do these things, he was a lousy Messiah. Almost completely worthless, because he only did this to a few people, and when he left, whatever hole he created just completely swallowed back together. And you will find that God is more intent on using your loss and your weakness and your suffering to accomplish his will than anything else. Now there are preachers in the church, prophets and all, that say, God wants all of y'all to be healthy all the time. He doesn't want you to ever be sick. And all you have to do is pray the right prayer or say the right verse, and if you'll just believe correctly, then you can all be completely miraculously healed and be well. They preach that. And that is not true. That's not true at all. That's not the point. Because you could walk and hear and speak and not be hungry and not be poor and still go to hell. Let's go on. Finishing up. Now, I hit that recently. This was a lot of fun. We had a lot of people come through. We have this every year. But we're not celebrating Halloween. And this is fun, and I believe that this is perfectly good fun. But this is not the point. The reason we have this is not because we feel like that people in our community just need more candy, especially Skittles. See, this is not the point. But it brought us face to face with people, I believe, who don't know Jesus. And it was our intent to sow seeds, to begin relationships, to open doors, to try to introduce ourselves so that we could introduce them in turn to Christ. I had no illusions that we might have somebody down on their knees praying the sinner's prayer during Halloween gathering. But I was looking around and praying for everyone who was there, because God says, I want you to be on your toes, because there are people here right now who need Jesus. Let's go on to the next slide, Carter. In a couple of weeks, the men are going to get together, men and boys, and we're going to meet at the cross up there on the top of Priceville Mountain. Brother Matthew Watt's church and their men's group has invited us to join them there at the cross for a brief time of fellowship and devotion, and then to go over to Libby's for breakfast immediately after that. It's not because men need fellowship or that we're going to have a good time, because we're going to have some good fellowship. I'm looking forward. Danny and I went, and we went on a mission trip with most of those guys that are going to be there, so I'm looking forward to renewing acquaintance with them. It's not that we need breakfast and that providing breakfast and fellowship opportunities around breakfast is a part of the church's mandate. No. I'm thinking of this as an opportunity where some man might come who would never come to church, or that they might, their church, New Hope, might bring someone from among their kindred or from among their prospects, a man or a boy who needs the Lord. I know that there are going to be some lost men there that day, and they are, in fact, the point. I love having a good time as much as anybody does, but that's not the point. Enjoying myself, having a good meal, none of that matters. Let's go on. This is the last one. Even honoring veterans. Now, I know without any shadow of doubt in my heart and my mind that Andy's one of the finest Christian men I know. And so today is for him, and truly, to sincerely honor him. But I've been praying all week long that somebody else would just wander in and said, I thought y'all might be praying for veterans today. Or I thought y'all might have a parade. I thought y'all might be giving ribbons to people who served. I don't know. Because churches, God doesn't expect us to be patriotic or to wave the flag. I'm proud to be an American. I'm a great patriot. I vote, and I tried not to be an activist, but I want to serve my country in other ways. But when a church has something like this, it's like feeding the 5,000. So this is important. But even this is not the point. If we have Veterans Day or Memorial Day, it is so that we might reach out to people and bring people in who might not ordinarily come to church, who might come to a special service, or allow us to involve them in some kind of occasion, not to trick them or deceive them or fool them. There's not anybody in the world who might come to a church and say, well, they might possibly trick us and talk about Jesus. When I started out in youth work, and we used to say, free pizza, come and get pizza. But it was during a time you think, boy, that was before Domino's and Pizza Hut, and there really wasn't many places. Pizza was wild to us.
Pizza, pizza. We could get up hundreds and hundreds of young people. Pizza, pizza, pizza. And then when they got here, we go, pizza, pizza, Jesus. Say, wait! Thought you said pizza. Yeah, there's pizza. But now it's Jesus. We got you. So I said, if we're going to say free pizza, and we want to tell you about Jesus, I said, let's put all our cards out on the table. We're not trying to trick anybody. It's not a bait and switch. We're not hoodwinking anybody. There's many a time when I've said, I bought someone a meal, and I said, this is a good meal, and I'm glad we're able to share this. But I said, if this is my, even getting something good to eat is not the most important thing in the world. Do you know Jesus? Do you know Jesus? Because when we separate, we go our separate ways. You may have a full stomach and feel